Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really grateful to be here. I'll be 75 next month. When I turned 70, I had this realization. I said, oh, the great majority of my life is behind me. What do you want to do with what's in front? This wasn't at all morbid. It was really, really liberating. And life meanders for all of us. And for me, it meandered in a very unexpected way. I had heard a couple months later about a bakery that was just about done being built in Uganda, the Orichinga refugee settlement. It's the oldest settlement in Uganda. And there was going to be a bakery that was run by refugees. And I happened, again in a very meandering way, to meet with the woman who had started a small foundation in Los Angeles to build this bakery. And we met for an hour and a half, and when it was over, I just said, oh, I'm a baker. If you need somebody to train the refugees, I'll go. So she accepted that idea, and in October 2021, I flew to Uganda for the first time and spent 2 weeks at the refugee settlement. There were 24 refugees who were going to be the bakers. 20 of them were women, and it was completely life-changing. I worked side by side and shoulder to shoulder, and we worked together and laughed together and ate together and fed the children and played with the children together, because the women, there's no such thing as childcare. The women come with a baby strapped on their back, and the only time the baby's not on the back is if it's sleeping or nursing. And the refugees come from Congo, Burundi, and Rwanda. These are countries that are incredibly insecure in terms of political stability. There's wars, civil wars, lots of terrible things. And I heard trauma stories that are just beyond belief. And one of the things that just startled me so much was that, all these human hearts were holding that trauma, but at the same time, there were these endless, spontaneous eruptions of elation and joy and laughing. And it's like, how can the human heart hold so much? I was massively struck by what I saw, the incredible destitution in the refugee settlement, the lack of any prospects. I mean, the people can't go home. They don't want to be in a refugee settlement, but there's no option, because wherever home is, either somebody wants to kill them or somebody else has taken over their land, and if they go back there, there's going to be that kind of a conflict. I think also what impressed me most, beyond this spontaneous eruptions of joy, was the unbelievable inner dignity, particularly among the women. The women would come every day in long dresses with really these incredibly vibrant, colorful patterns. I didn't get to know the kind of vocabulary of the patterns, but the patterns of the dresses would indicate their nationality. And they always came with this really great elegance and inner self-dignity kind of thing. So that was 2 weeks that I spent there, and then I just felt like, wow, I've been really fortunate as a baker. I've actually baked and taught on 6 continents, and I had once been in Africa teaching, but when I was at Orichinga, that was so life-altering, and I felt like it was the most compelling place I've ever been. And so I've made 7 other trips. I've been there 8 times. The first time, my flight and transportation and hotel and food were paid for. But after that, I felt like, no. Any money that is directed towards me should be going towards the people who really need it, the refugees. So I go in self-funded trips now, and then it just feels more appropriate to do it that way. The children are unbelievably destitute, but they also can just have these incredible joyous moments. And one thing I've always believed, because it's true, is that, everybody in this room was a child once. Everybody, the one thing that we have in common as human beings is we're all children once. And I just feel like we have to do everything we can to preserve childhood for every child, because once it's gone, it ain't coming back. So, yeah, the children. So I've made 8 trips. I've never seen lions or gorillas, which I'm sure would be totally fascinating, but I'm not really interested in going on safaris because people are so compelling. And it's also been wonderful for me because each trip I go to the same small city called Mbarara. It's in the southwest. And my relationships are getting richer and deeper with every trip because I'm seeing and being with the same people each time. Specifically, 2 women, Angela and Sophie, who are Ugandan nationals, they oversee the bakery, even though they're not trained as bakers. And we're like this close, and they each have children who I've now seen for 4.5 years. And so I've kind of watched them grow from 2-year-olds up or 5-year-olds up, and that's a great, great thing. So Sophie and Angela and a fellow baker named Mitch from Rhode Island and myself, in November 2023, we sat together one evening in a room and decided we wanted to start an NGO, a nonprofit, which we did. It's called Smart Initiatives Uganda, and we registered it with the Ugandan government. We're kind of at the outset of getting it set up as a 501(c)(3) in America, but it's registered with the government. It's mission-driven, nonprofit, and we have 4 main missions. One is paying school fees, primarily for girls, because if girls go to school, there'll be more doors open to them in society, and there aren't that many doors in Uganda for anybody, unless you're rich and famous and powerful. And girls who go to school are much less likely to become mothers when they're 15 years old, which is unbelievably common. So paying school fees for girls, for children, I should say, and trying to increase nutrition. When I go, I bring vegetable seeds with me. I brought 326 packets last time. And when you give out a packet of vegetable seeds, you can't believe how people's faces just explode with joy. It's just remarkable. It's not the kind of thing that any of us has experienced in America. I mean, just something as simple as that. And so we've distributed them to refugee schools, one of which I'll talk about more at length soon. But that's, increasing nutrition is a big goal for us too. Skills development, any way that we can increase people's knowledge about things that can provide some kind of a livelihood feels really important. And nutrition. And there's another program that started last year that's directly connected with feeding. Well, it's wandering street children are who we're feeding. And I'll talk more about that later. So one of the initiatives that we began specifically was at a refugee school in Orochinga called the Kajau School. And Angela and I had all these seeds, and we went to the Kajau School, which is right in the heart of the refugee settlement, and spoke with Mr. Iga, who's the headmaster, and with teacher Emily. The first time I was there were 330 deaf children, many of whom are also crippled or epileptic or have mental issues, and they were very interested in whatever assistance we could offer. So they got a great number of packets of seeds. We bought them hose. Anything possible to increase nutrition is really well valued. And I've made now about 12 visits there. One of the things that was really a pressing need was their food it never varies. They eat a very thin porridge in the morning that's made out of white cornmeal. And then for lunch and dinner, they eat what's called posho, which is that same white cornmeal cooked very, very thick. There's no nutrition, there's carbohydrates, I guess, and calories, so your belly feels full. So they have the posho with beans, at least they have beans, which are very ubiquitous there. That'll be their midday meal, that'll be their evening meal. They probably don't even know the definition of meat, nor fruit. Fruit is in incredible abundance there, but they don't get any fruit at all. So it's pretty meager. So the seeds are really beneficial to them to just try to broaden their nutrition. And the one need they really expressed over and over, Mr. Iga and teacher Emily, was a need for a covered eating structure. They have a structure that is really meager. It's got tin sheets for the roof that are used because that makes them cheaper. So they've got holes in them from the prior uses and all that stuff. And I said, well, I'll see what I can do. So actually, I just asked people I know and just reached out to some other people, you know, if you'd like to contribute, we're going to try to build a real eating structure for these kids. So on my last visit there, which was in October and November of 2025, I was able to bring donations from here that allowed the real eating structure to get started. And we joke over there, something called Uganda time. If Angela calls and says, oh, I'll pick you up in 10 minutes, it's like, great, I can take an hour nap. But boy, if there's work to be done, we saw Mr. Iga on Friday. I gave him the donations that I had able to bring with me. Saturday, materials were ordered and delivered. Monday morning, 7:30, when I was back there to see what was going on, they were already starting to work. So the settlement's 35 miles from Mbarara, where I stay, and I was able to go there three times a week for the duration of my stay this last time. And they hadn't finished it by any means, and we had gone through all the donations, and so I said, all right, I want these children now on this trip. Now there's actually 435 deaf children. It had been 330 2 years ago, and now it's increasing. 40 of those children are nationals, the rest of them are all refugees. Anyway, so I just kept sending personal funds because their school term was over before Christmas, and they're not coming back until actually day after tomorrow. And so I just wanted more than anything to see that structure finished. So I just used personal funds, and now they've got a roof on it with new tin sheets, not used ones, and it's usable. They still are hoping that we can send more money so they can put in a concrete floor and put facing on both sides of the bricks, but at least it's usable, and the children will be having their meals in there. And it's like, oh, if only I could be there for that first meal. It would be amazing to see them and to be with them. So that's a big project that is ongoing. The other one is feeding homeless children. They're all over the place. There's so many of them that you don't see them because it's just such a common sight. And so this is in Mbarara, which is a small city. I think it's the third largest in Uganda. It's unbelievably vibrant. You can't believe it. There are 3 or 4 traffic lights, but they don't work. But I guess you can still feel like you live in a city because there's traffic lights. Anyway, I was accosted by a boy a couple of years ago near the Central Market, where I do a lot of marketing. And I knew, he didn't speak English, but I knew he was interested in money, which I don't give to children. He was dressed in one hugely oversized coat. He might have been 12 years old. And that was probably his worldly possessions, unless he could find a piece of cardboard to sleep on. And so I took him down what I call Taylor Alley. It's this very narrow alley and on both sides there's people, men and women, with foot-powered sewing machines, and there's easily 50 of them. But I knew there was a stand there, a charcoal burner that made simple food, and so I took the boy there, and I said, buy a Rolex for this boy. That's this ubiquitous street food. It's not a watch. It's called Rolex because that means rolled eggs. It's a chapati with basically scrambled eggs with some sliced onions inside it. It's super delicious. So I said, but I'd like to buy a Rolex for this boy. So I did, and then he left, and I said to myself, can't we feed some of these children? So that became a really big initiative, and I was leaving just a couple days later, so we couldn't bring it to fruition. But that's taken on a lot of steam, and now we are currently feeding about 125 street children, 2 days a week, big bowls of rice and beans. And again, it's unimaginable to see the effect that a bowl of food can have on these children, because they live in ghettos. It's a dangerous place. And for them to be able to come and just have a nutritious meal 2 times a week, it's unimaginable the impact that this is having on them. So that's really what's going on. The next phases that we hope to be able to activate would be getting some of the children off the streets into school. I'll just give a little more background on this. After I met the boy and I bought him the Rolex, I told Angela, why can't we feed some of these children? So she brought me to meet this guy named Francis, who was a street child for years. He was getting into petty thievery and some drugs. They'd snort benzene there because it's cheap. And he was rescued by this very magnetic Pastor Willie, who I've met a few times. And Pastor Willie brought him and a number of other boys into his compound by the church that he's in charge of, and gave them food, clothes, safety, education. And Francis graduated from university, which was inconceivable when he was living on the streets. And now Francis is doing the same thing. He's got 45 children in his very meager compound that he's giving food, clothing, safety, and education to. And it's remarkable. So Angela brought me to meet him, and then we went and spoke with Pastor Willie, and he had said, okay, there's this area behind the church where there's some wooden structures, and you can feed the children there. You can cook there and feed the children. But I was going home, so nothing came of it. But on my last visit, oh yeah, a lot of things came. And now we've got the feeding program going. So if we're able to, the next goal would be take some of those children that really want to get off the streets, that want education, and provide them a respite, basically. And we'll see where that goes. There's already a structure that's been offered to us where we can raise these children. So we'll see, but that's a big one for our next steps, as is increasing the number of children we can pay school fees for. In Uganda, if you want your child to go to school, you pay the fees, right? We all know when we look at our tax bills that we're paying quite a lot of money for our school, which is good because everybody gets an education. In Uganda, you pay, which is the main reason why a huge percentage of children don't get educated. Or if they do, they'll be done 3rd or 4th grade, and then the parents run out of money. So I'm going to give a PowerPoint downstairs during coffee hour, and I hope you can come because it won't take too long, but you'll see photos from Uganda, and there's something so vivid about photos that are so much more effective than any words that I can speak. So I hope you can stay and see that. I named it Hope, Resilience, and Tenacity because I was reminded of a beautiful, beautiful poem by Emily Dickinson. To make a prairie, it takes a clover and one bee. One clover and a bee and reverie. If bees are few, the reverie alone will do. Thanks.